Well, I've always said that luck plays a major part in every career, but it certainly played a part in mine. Although I wanted to get into the industry at an early age without a clue as to what that involved or what I really wanted to be, my aunt happened to be a famous film critic working for the Sunday Times called Ivor Powell. She, with a slight incline of her head, looked down at me, and she got me a load of interviews. After chomping my way through a whole load of them, I had this call from a guy called Roger Carras, who was head of publicity on what was then known as Journey Beyond the Stars. For whatever reason, you know, I got to meet on the Monday, I got called up to meet Victor Linden, who was Stanley's associate producer. And he became like a mentor to me and everything for the rest of his life. I absolutely loved him. He's like a sort of second dad. Anyway, he basically agreed with Roger that I was vaguely okay, and so off I started. I was put down working alongside Stanley in this war room, which was basically where all the effects shots were planned. And I'd never done anything like publicity before, so it was kind of crazy, really. He had a very intense look about him, and I, quite frankly, in the first year or so, I didn't say a word to him. I mean, I was just some little guy that would sort of see him marching past purposely. Maybe once said, you know, good morning or whatever it is, but that's about it. He had different sides to him, like all of us. He was laughing a lot on that movie as well. He had quite a juvenile side in some respects, but also his intellect was formidable. Somehow there must have been some point of engagement where he saw something in me. So I sit in my office and suddenly I think a guy called Dickie Holt, who I think was a second, just came charging by saying, oh, Ivor, can you come up onto the set, and do you think you can keep your eyes closed and not flickering? So I said, I haven't a bloody clue.
This is the first time that men have been put into hibernation before departure.
I played one of the guys in the hibernaculums called Kaminsky. I don't know how I actually existed in that thing, because I actually get claustrophobic. Who realised at the time that that was, you know, it was still going to be in the cut. I was murdered by Hal. I mean, if it's anything that one would say about Stanley, and I mean his film of filmmaking, I mean, he basically is in charge. And he put an advert in the trades, and it was as a result of some article about Douglas Trumbull being in charge of special effects. And it was basically a rebuttal of that, saying, you know, not to take away the fact that he was a key effects technician, but it was Stanley Kubrick who was the director of all effects, nobody else. He was absolutely in charge of every facet, everything.
There was a discussion of including 2001 in my credits. Apparently Stanley Kubrick exerted pressure at MGM and they pulled that out of the press kit. And I've been very, very angry about it. You can't change history. It's not the Soviet Union.
Oh, well, I remember being on the first day's shoot at Shepperton on 2001, the TMA-1 excavation site, so watching them all in those suits, which were to die for. Stanley hand-holding this Panaflex camera, just following them down the kind of the rampway down into the pit. Bloody awesome. I mean, there's a bit of movie history. The whole thing was like a family to me. It was the first movie that I ever made, and so at the end of it, you know, suddenly the crews start going off onto other things. They're all fully fledged technicians, etc., and I'm not. And so for me, it was suddenly like the circus is going, the circus is fragmenting. Oh my God, what am I going to do? In the end, I was working in sort of in the environments of Stanley's office. He made the decision not to show any of the stills photographer's pictures. He just basically said, no, I'm not going to show any of those. I'm just going to show frames of the movie. And so what he basically did was cut about 20, 30 frames out of the movie, including some frames out of the material that, of course, he then edited out of the movie entirely. I was just spending my life cutting these 65mm frames up and putting them in sleeves, ready as press releases. And I brought my wife along to help me do it. That was the last job that I had in it, so I hung on to that movie like grim death until the very end. I didn't want to kind of let go. After 2001, I came back and I was sort of, trying to get myself work as a first assistant. I had a call one day from Paul Cowan, basically said, look, I've got a week's work being offered to me and I've said yes to this 2-day job or something from some company. I have no clue who they are. They're called RSA or Ridley Scott Associates or something, and they're doing some commercial at Isleworth Studios. Do you know anybody? And I said, sod it, yeah, I'll do it. So that's how I ended up working for Ridley. And when he found out I'd worked on 2001, and we sort of seemed to hit it off. So I became his regular first, and then ultimately, within a year or something, I got taken on as his main producer. It's absolutely extraordinary, really. He was not a fan of science fiction at all. He loved historical drama because he saw that was the way he could actually use his eye, and he just loved that period, hence the Duellists, obviously the first film. I mean, he obviously liked 2001, but that was kind of a different ball game. But when I sort of started talking about B-movies, horror movies, he would look at them, and then we had a little tiny theatre in the offices, and he would say, "It's a pile of shit, don't get it," or whatever. We had gone down to the Dordogne in the middle of France for a recce, and we were coming back on the fast train from Brive. There was just this Metal Hurlant, this heavy metal comic strip book that was sitting on the news rack, which I bought, and we were sitting opposite each other in the carriage, hurtling back, and he sort of eyes narrowed, and he sort of looked at it and he sort of said, let's have a look at that. And there was a Dan O'Bannon story in there, I think it's The Long Tomorrow. I don't know, he just suddenly, he liked that, he loved that kind of imagery. It awakened perhaps something in him. So Sandy Lieberson sort of plucked a copy of Alien when they were looking for another director, and thrust it across. Ridley this time wanted to read it first, and I had to sit the other side of his office with a closed kind of door. I was in my little office and he was in his one on the other side, and all I could hear him sort of going, "They're fucking joking, you've got to be fucking joking, oh gee," he was, as he was reading the various bits of Dan O'Bannon's and Ron Shoussett's sort of thing with the alien ripping people's heads off and crawling across the ceiling, and it was the opposite of Star Wars, which in a sense, is phantasmagorical, whereas this was very grounded. My job on Alien was some trepidation. I had to do a budget on it because I have to say that I hadn't done many budgets before. I wasn't really an established line producer as such, but somehow it was twice as expensive as they were planning, I think, on spending, but we got the go-go. I think Ridley, with his slight cynicism about sci-fi, and certainly his dislike of the sort of B-movie type things, I think that in one perverse way was the magic ingredient. Is his eye, his sort of production designer's eye, his everything. I mean, I really learnt how to make movies working with him on commercials, because they were all really high-end commercials, and with a relatively small crew, I mean, tiny crew compared to the sort of extravagance of making movies today. But we made crews just quicker, more efficiently. And I think the crew respected people like him because he never really stopped working. And so he kind of had this loyal retinue really of technicians, from production designers and lighting cameramen down through the ranks, who were all prepared to go to the ends of the earth for him, But Giger was just, out of the world. I mean, how many people have tried to envision what an alien life form is going to look like? But yeah, there's nothing like Alien. Just brilliant. The most satisfying was seeing Alien and actually going around all the previews, etc. That was fantastic. My God, what a buzz. And getting the kind of reactions to those, of which there's some wonderfully apocryphal stories about some of the previews because people hadn't kind of seen that, I don't know, intense sort of scariness before. I mean, it was different. Very tough part to play. She's a strong woman, that's for sure, but it was a tough on this because whether Ridley sort of engineered it, I think he did engineer it slightly. I think he sort of talked to the other artists basically sort of not to be too friendly to her, sort of to kind of isolate her a little bit. And with people like Yaphet always sort of not liking the idea that, a big guy like him is going to get done in by an alien.
There is a clause in the contract.
He kept trying to argue with Ridley, corner Ridley and argue with him about, do you think I really should die? And
Come on, anybody say
yes, Yaphet, you got to die. There are lots of sequences I can think of on Alien that one was around at, most of them really. I mean, Brett's death, for one. I think we shot it on a funny feeling it was on a Saturday morning, but I bought in our Alsatian, Sheba, stray Alsatian that we'd acquired, and it was my job. Wouldn't be allowed today. The cat was there, and basically I suddenly produced Sheba, who was definitely a cat and squirrel chaser, out of the shadows, and the cat's reaction to my dog, that was in the film. Just shut himself, that's it. The dog was actually such a softie in the end. Having chased the cat would have probably killed it. But anyway. I saw Blade Runner at the Albert Hall recently, where they had the orchestra playing with a picture digitally projected up. And I'll tell you what, I saw it through kind of different eyes. This time it almost like cemented it, and it really, I kind of got it. Just aware of the visual poetry, the picture and the music and everything. Oh, Christ, it was fantastic. Because when you make a movie, when you're that involved and you work for God knows how long before, and you go through versions of the script, so whether you're a writer or whether you're just a producer, etc., you go through all these stages. It's very hard to step back and detach yourself from that movie when you see it. And you're always thinking of, oh, I remember that scene that was in there, or that dialogue wasn't like that. All of those things, and so it's very hard. So I loved Hampton's first script. As I've often said, it was a much more intimate version. It was really much more sort of love story version, and it was very sad and very poetic. Whereas Ridley, when he sort of wants his vision, his vision of cities, he wants to open it up, then obviously the characters in that vision sort of can, by default, become slightly sort of smaller. That is definitely my sort of mantra. My thing about sci-fi is, unless you empathise with those people, then whatever the imagery, the image is fine, but it is insignificant compared to the characters that dwell within the images. I mean, it was a tough movie for everybody. Funny enough, I found a picture. We're both standing up, Ridley and I. I think Ridley or I am leaning on a camera, and we're literally asleep, we're asleep on our feet. Because, I mean, it just was exhausting. Sadly, I mean, when it came out, rather like 2001, was not well received by a lot of the critics. there was a degree of competitiveness and sort of maybe even sort of professional jealousy over here. And I remember seeing a few colleagues now who'll be nameless at a BAFTA screening of it, where I could see a few people sniggering away in the background saying, yeah, Ridley's got it at last, this one's not going to work for him. Little did they know. So it is absolutely bizarre. 2 films, 2001, that took a while for the audience to find it. And really the same for Blade Runner. It has really become a gathering force.